It is my pleasure to welcome you to IPI for this policy forum and to launch and discuss the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action. The event is organized in collaboration with the United Nations Population Fund. It is also my great pleasure to welcome to IPI the Executive Director of the Fund, Dr. Babatunde Osotimehin, I hope I pronounced it correctly, who will be making opening remarks in a short while. Involving young people in the international community's efforts to address today's and tomorrow's global challenges is absolutely necessary if we want to get things right. This is true in all areas of the work of the United Nations, from peace building to sustainable development to climate change, but it also is true for humanitarian action, where young people around the world can play and do play an important role. While young people are committed and ready to contribute as active participants, they are not always given the space and means to do so. The commitments made in the Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action provide an excellent tool to strengthen young people's involvement in humanitarian action and to take it to the next level. We are honored to have with us here this morning a highly distinguished panel of advocates for young people's involvement in humanitarian action, and we do look forward to be shared their thoughts. It is now my pleasure to welcome Mr. Gary Connill, who is Under-Secretary General for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, and also to welcome Ms. Fatoumata Niadia, who is the Deputy Executive Director of the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, UNICEF. I'm also very pleased to welcome two young people of humanitarian action to our panel today. A warm welcome to Ms. Fonny Joyce, who fled her home in the country of South Sudan and found refuge in Kenya, where she recently graduated from Kenyatta University. Ms. Joyce also recently participated as a youth representative in the Global Refugee Youth Consultations. And also a warm welcome to Mr. Marianne Sedlak, who is the Liaison Officer for Human Rights and Peace of the International Federation of Medical Students Association. He has led his organization's delegation to the World Humanitarian Summit last May. For the detailed biographies of the members of this distinguished panel, you will find them in your program. But before we begin in earnest, may I remind you to please silence your cell phones, though we encourage you to tweet about the event. It is now my great pleasure to invite Dr. Babatunde Osotimehin to deliver his opening remarks before I hand over to my colleague Els Buff, who is IPI's Senior Advisor for Humanitarian Affairs and who will moderate this event. So, Els, over to you. And Dr. Osotimehin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Taja. It's interesting how, if you notice, as the speech got on, there was an improvement in the pronunciation of my name. That's not unusual. Let me welcome you to New York and the launch of the Compact of Young People for Young People in Humanitarian Action. Let me also thank the International Peace Institute and the President for hosting this event and welcoming all of us here today. The compact was born more than 3 months ago in Istanbul at the World Humanitarian Summit. I was proud to chair that meeting, and I'm happy to be here again today with all of you, and I see faces that were there at that time, because I believe that we have to continue to work together to take this forward. In July, we organized the first meeting of the members of the new Compact for Young People in Humanitarian Action. And that was great to bring everybody together. That's a tweet. We have an unprecedented commitment of key actors to ensure that the priorities, needs, and rights of young people that are affected by disaster, conflict, forced displacement, and other humanitarian crises are addressed. This is a commitment that young people are informed and meaningfully engaged through all stages of humanitarian action. And I want to pause here because I think that all too often when we talk about engagement of young people, we only do it by mentioning it, not by engaging with them. I think most of us who are obviously not young people find it very difficult to actually allow young people to be part of a conversation. And if we really want to move this agenda and any agenda forward within now and within the context of the 2030 agenda, we have to create space and allow young people to actually be part of the determination of where we're going to go. If we don't do it, we're going to have quite a lot of challenges and problems. As the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said in his closing remarks at the summit, of course, the summit was not an end point, it was a turning point. And of course, several things came out of the World Humanitarian Summit, and one of which I think is significant, is what we're talking about here. I've said it before, and I will say it again, if we want effective humanitarian action and hope in the future, we must embrace the full participation and priorities of young people. If we want a more stable and sustainable future, we can no longer afford to leave young people behind. To put young people at the center, the Compact has 5 key actions for accountability, and I'm expecting, and as I just was going to mention his name, Ahmed, the UN Special Envoy for Youth, to speak to that. You're welcome, sir. In short, it's all about participation, about leadership, services, capacity, and local action. Together, we have a responsibility to build on and further strengthen young people and their capacity to be effective humanitarian actors. Now, that's a great responsibility, because what we're talking about are young people in every clime, in every geography. It's not about New York, it's not about Istanbul, it's about everywhere. Indeed, places where you and I have never been, but where we have to be in order to ensure that young people are part of this. And let me say this, investing in young people is an investment in humanity, and we need to do it so that we can move the world forward. Give a context for this. 60%, 70% of Sub-Saharan Africa has young people below the age of 30, 35. So you are dealing with a huge number of people that we have to work with. And I would use, or sometimes I use a context, and I use a statistic. 60 million in the world today 60 million in the world are 10-year-old adolescent girls. 60 million. 60 million. 10-year-olds, adolescent girls. So you have these that we have to ensure we empower, we educate, and we liberate so that they can reach their full potential. Now, for UNFPA, this means that we must and we will continue to work with young people to meet their needs, including their sexual and reproductive health needs, and including, and I say this underscored, we must also give them education, comprehensive sexuality education to be able to make choices in their lives, to prevent and be able to ensure that in making choices, they are the ones who make the choices. Who they marry, when they marry, how many children they want to have, if they want to have children, and at what point that happens in their lives. And also to prevent gender-based violence and to be able to support their leadership as first responders. Together, we must lead effective humanitarian action with relative data about young people to improve planning, preparedness, responses, and rebuilding. The compact provides us with a blueprint for moving this agenda forward, and we are moving forward. This is evident by the tremendous positive response we have received. At the summit in Istanbul, more than 30 humanitarian partners, governments, NGOs, UN agencies, and the private sector signed the historic compact. Since the summit, more than 65 organizations and entities have demonstrated a significant interest in signing and becoming members of the compact. This represents an unprecedented commitment of key actors. This is truly a first time that so many partners, and I'm talking now partners across the board, not just UN people, but partners in the private sector, in civil society, in government, who want to be part of this. And that's the spirit of the Agenda 2030. That's the spirit of the humanitarian action we want to take. It's the spirit of the continuum of development and humanitarian action, which we must build. And so, as we go forward, this will ensure that we build a strong agenda for young people in humanitarian action. We at the United Nations Population Fund, when my sister from UNICEF was being introduced, and you know, there was the full name of UNICEF, you know, that is, you now had it all together. It was kind of sound strange to my ears, because many people don't even know what UNICEF stands for, you know. I always ensure that you know what UNFPA stands for, United Nations Population Fund. It's proud to co-sponsor this meeting together with the International Federation of the Red Cross, and I thank our host, IPA. Let me also thank you all for a strong commitment, and I pledge UNFPA's continued leadership moving forward, the Compact for Young People for Humanitarian Action, together with all of you, including UNICEF. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oshotimihen, for your leadership and commitment. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, let me first join also Terje in extending a warm welcome to all of you and thanking our co-hosts, UNFPA, and the panelists for making today's important conversation possible. Our topic today is very relevant to some of the work we do here at IPI. As some of you know, IPI hosts the Independent Commission on Multilateralism, or ICM, whose final report will be also launched here this Wednesday. And the Commission analyzed contemporary challenges for the multilateral system anchored in the UN in order to make concrete policy recommendations to make the UN better fit for purpose. When you think that people under the age of 24 make up 48% of the world's population, that they're eager to contribute to their communities and to make the world a better place. They also face a wide range of challenges of their own. So there's a clear imperative for their inclusion and their participation in policy making. And that is why the ICM held specific consultations on how to engage, to support and to empower youth to address global challenges. I encourage you to read the Commission's working papers on this topic, as well as on humanitarian action, which was one of the other areas we looked into. And you can find those papers in the back of the room and on our website, where you can also watch the videos of the public consultations we held on this. And we'll be finalizing the thematic papers on this later this fall. But I'm sure that today's conversation will bring some new perspectives also on that work. As Terje mentioned earlier, we're very pleased to host an esteemed group of speakers to discuss the compact and to share their insights on how to build on it to transform humanitarian action for and with young people. So we very much look forward to hearing from all 5 of them. We've asked our panelists to speak for about 5 minutes each. We'd really like to have a moment to engage with the audience after that, so I'll ask them to stick to their 5 minutes each because we're 5. So after the panel discussion, I will open up the floor to allow all of you in the audience to engage with the panel and to contribute to the discussion. If you're joining us online, you're welcome to tweet in your questions and comments, and you should use our hashtag #IPINST to do that. So now, without further ado, let me turn to the panel. And I'd like to welcome also Mr. Ahmad Al-Hendawi. You are the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and you've been a great advocate for the Compact. May I ask you maybe to present the substance of the Compact and tell us more about its origin and the commitment made by its signatories? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here. I apologize for coming late, coming from uptown to here. You use all the tricks you know about navigating in Manhattan, but guess what? At this time of the year, they don't work. So you have to be stuck there. But I was very pleased, before maybe answering your question, to share with you what I was busy with. We were announcing the UN Young Leaders for the Sustainable Development Goals. A group of 17 young leaders were chosen out of 18,000 nominations. Some of them, they are doing things in humanitarian settings that are remarkable in every sense. From the one who invented ways for turning dirty water just using a very simple innovation that I'm clearly not competent to describe technically, to another one who is predicting using big data the outbreak of diseases, including Zika and Ebola, and many other innovators and young people who are coming at the forefront of the humanitarian response, offering very fresh ideas about how to respond, maximize the resources and maximize the impact of the response, and yet they're still struggling with the very basic recognition. And one of them was asking me about how he could make his case since he predicted several outbreaks and it's been acknowledged, but yet I think there's a room for catering more for young people as part of the solution and the response. To go back and to talk about the Young Compact, or the Compact for Young People and humanitarian action, I just would like you to zoom out for a second and think of the UN 4 pillars before coming to the humanitarian work and to describe you where this fits to me. The UN, often we talk about the UN with 4 pillars: peace, security, development, human rights, and humanitarian work. Now, in development, we all know it. Young people traditionally have been looked at as a development topic: education, employment, sometimes health, etc. I think that under this development track, we could argue, say that youth issues were well captured in the Sustainable Development Goals. There are plenty of good initiatives there, new initiatives, decent jobs for youth, and new initiatives related to education, also about engaging youth in the monitoring and evaluation of the Sustainable Development Goals, and there are plenty of work is happening already at that track. When it comes to the peace and security, you're all familiar now with the 2250. This room is familiar, particularly, because we have been discussing in this room a lot about peace and security. And I think for the first time, we have plugged in youth issues in peace and security in a meaningful way. It's no longer a seasonal thing, it's a structural way of getting youth issues there. Now we come to the third track, which is human rights. Now human rights, then the Human Rights Council for a long time didn't really react that much to the youth issues. Just recently, we managed to get the first resolution, the Human Rights Council on Youth. There's a panel taking place after tomorrow, and there's another forum there. And my hope that the question of youth and human rights will be well captured in the UN instruments, since we know there are a gap in capturing the rights for young people. I don't want to talk about the youth rights now. This will be a different discussion on why it's extremely important to pick up the question of youth rights as one of the instruments we need to bring it through the Human Rights Council. When it comes to the fourth, humanitarian work, that's where we have been struggling the most. Because there, young people are looked at as basically either beneficiaries or the ones who are displaced or the ones affected, or maybe materials for fundraising sometimes, as seeing how they are, pity they are, and all of that. And we're neglecting sometimes to see what contributions young people can make to contribute to the resilience of their communities. So this compact started with amazing partners, and here I have to acknowledge and recognize the leadership of Professor Babatunde and with UNFPA and the many partners who came together with UNICEF and agreeing with us with the simple notion there's no way for bringing a better response to a humanitarian situation without making sure you're bringing people on board at the early stage. And that's where identify 5 gaps needs to be addressed. Number one, as simple as it might sound, is data. We don't know what happens to young people in conflict zones, emergency settings. Do you know that it used to be 16 to 60 years old in refugee settings as one age group for data collection? So you have from 16 to 60 years old as one block. And then good luck navigating with the realities of young people in these places. So the first thing we need to know about the situation of young people there and how they can be best assessed. The second is about increasing more partnerships and inclusion of young people in a systematic way in the delivery of programs and services, not only as beneficiaries, but also as partners. And the third is about building the capacity of young people and youth-led organizations in particular. And here I have to acknowledge as well the major group of children and youth who are here as well, and they have led the consultation in Doha that took place in the lead up to the World Humanitarian Summit. I think that was one of the key recommendations that came. There's lots of potentials and talents among young people. We need to invest more there if you would like to deliver a better humanitarian response, whether in conflict or in disaster at large. And the fourth, no surprise to anyone, is the question of resources. And resources there is still scarce. We know about the traditional humanitarian response, shelters, food, water, and water and sanitation to some extent. Then these 4 elements were debated and extended. We said, like part of the early humanitarian response, maybe we should add education. And then education was added, and you have a whole coalition of actors working in education, and you have even a private sector forum and coalition to support adding humanitarian education to the humanitarian response. Yet, what we still find as an area that requires additional support is capturing the youth need, even in education. Most of the education program offered to young people in refugee settings stops at 14 or 15 years old. And then you end up having a problem with post-primary education, you have a problem with vocational training, and you have a problem, in fact, with a few years where young people have absolutely nothing to do and no prospects for a better future. And I've been reminded of this repeatedly. I mean, I come from Jordan, I've seen it in Syria and Syrian refugees over and again, where the question for many young Syrians there is not only ending the conflict, but how are we going to spend 4, 5, 6 years in a camp with no prospect for a better future, and I'm not being invested in my skills or my capacity, and then this will be a regret at the long time. So the question of expanding that, and actually I would even go further in connecting and showing the nexus between the 4 pillars is youth, by saying, you know, when you have young people dropping out and there are no programs offered to 15 years and above, and then you wonder why they are becoming so vulnerable for the recruitment of radical groups, clearly you have a situation where there's a black hole in peace-building efforts where all the gains we're making with children disappearing when they're becoming adolescents and youth because we cannot sustain that afterwards. So that's a question of resources and expansion for that focus. And last but not least, I would say all of that would require a stronger partnership, which the Compact is answering by bringing together at the first stage with the World Humanitarian Summit event that was convened in Istanbul and the youth session, which was well attended. We have seen new partners coming on board. I've seen UNHCR coming saying we will address the youth and data question. We will help in that. We see UNICEF coming forward and making commitments. We have seen UNFPA carrying this forward together with the youth organization, the Red Cross and Red Crescent and other actors who are coming, recognizing that there's a better way to do this response. So the compact there is not a coalition for just knowledge sharing, it's a coalition for all the commitments that was made under the compact from the different 5 actions need to be translated not by others, but also by the members of the compact. I think this has been well picked up by everyone, and now we know that close to 60 member states and UN agencies and other organizations would like to be part of it. So that's in a nutshell. If it's a nutshell, that's a very expensive. It's not a nutshell anymore, but that's kind of just to capture the spirit, the rationale, the different 5 key components of it, and why it's extremely important, and why this is not an exercise for issuing recommendations, but really making commitments and honoring the commitments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. for a very passionate plea. Thank you very much. I'm going to now turn to Mr. Conil. Mr. Conil, over half of the 17 million Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers around the world are young people. I've had the honor personally to witness their incredible commitment to humanitarian values and humanitarian action in a number of countries around the globe. From there and from your perspective, could you tell us how the compact can be effectively implemented within the humanitarian sector, and who are the critical partners in leveraging and widening the ownership of the compact?
Well, thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for including us in these discussions. Let me say, on behalf of the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, that we are fully committed to this partnership, and it's not by accident. As you've rightly mentioned, through our national societies, through 160,000+ branches and over 17 million volunteers placed in the communities before, during, and after events, we have continuous feedback, and our implication in this partnership is a reflection of the deliberate commitment we've made to make sure that we're integrating the voice of the young people in everything we do in terms of planning for and responding to emergencies. A few years back, those of you that were part of the Ebola response had the opportunity to see the thousands of burials that our volunteers conducted in countries like Liberia. Let me be the first to say that this would not have been possible without the energy, the commitment, the innovation of young people, personally involved at their own risk sometimes in making sure that they were able to protect their communities. Time and time again, we've seen firsthand the benefits and the sustainability of implicating young people in our efforts. So our presence here today is by no means an accident. It is really a testimony of the commitment of our national societies to this effort. In response to your direct question, what we've found over the years is that building compacts and partnerships is an important first step. But we know that it takes much more. It takes the individual commitments of every single organizations to move away from business as usual. The implications for the action points are quite serious. It requires us to put young people not as an afterthought. In a situation of extreme emergency, man-made or otherwise, to ask yourself and to tell yourself as an organization, have we put in place the systems to integrate the critical role that young people will have to play in this process? So first and foremost, it requires us as partners to rethink our operations to make sure that we're integrating this thought as part of our operations, which is one of the things we're in the process of doing right now at the IFRC. So our commitment to this compact means that business as usual is no longer an option. But we will still have to go a step further. It also means clearly defining measures of success, rethinking how we're measuring our success to make sure that we're able to show the implication and the involvement and the importance that we're giving to young people in our operations. It means rethinking the tools and instruments we have to make sure that if anyone in this room is a parent, you immediately understand that engaging youth requires language, tools, and instruments for which our organizations are not necessarily well equipped. So it means thinking about the tools and the systems we have in place right now and the processes that we have in place right now to make sure that they're accommodating the commitment we're making today. It means changes in behavior in the way partners fund our programs and operations and the expectation they have of us in terms of results. So the commitment that we're making through this partnership and through these 5R actions are the beginning, in my view, of a thought process that will require all of us to think in detail of what this will mean for operations in the future if we are to effectively be successful. Let me stop here and give others a chance to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. We'll now talk to Ms. Joyce. Ms. Joyce, you and your family, as Terry said, were forced to flee your homes in South Sudan and ultimately found refuge in Kenya. Could you maybe, from your own personal experience and perspective as growing up as a young person and also as a refugee, to say what would success for this compact mean to you?
Thank you so much for having me here today. Growing up as a refugee is not easy. Growing up as a refugee woman is not easy. It's very difficult. And with the war that happened in my country back in 1991, my parents fled the country and they had to trek for about 17 days before they got to Uganda, to a town called Nimule. It's a border town. It's a border between Uganda and South Sudan. And once they got there, my father decided he had to get to Kenya because he was a journalist and he was being wrongfully accused of being an informant for the rebels. So he knew he had no choice but to just head to Kenya to protect us. The success of this compact would mean that young refugees would be empowered, they'd be given access to opportunities to voice their ideas, to engage in decision-making processes, and develop their potential, their leadership potentials. It would mean that the existing knowledge is considered, their qualifications is looked into, the skills that they have is thought deeply into, and they're engaging them would basically mean that we're empowering them, we're mentoring them to do much more than just sit back and relax. The success of this compact would mean that young refugees will be safe. They'll have access to personal documentations, they'll have freedom of movement, and they'll have protective services. This year I got to attend the World Humanitarian Summit and the Global Refugee Youth Consultation. And I got to meet different refugees from around the world. All of them had one voice. They wanted to be consulted, they wanted to be listened to, they wanted to be engaged, they wanted to be involved in the decision-making processes. If this compact is to be successful, then we need to go back to them and assess their needs. We need to find out what is it that they want, how can we come in? Because if we don't understand their needs, then it becomes very hard. We'll have this compact here with the actions listed down, but without involving them, it won't be successful. Most of them are stepping up in doing different activities. They've stepped up to just do things that will benefit them and their society. We need to understand what they've done. We need to evaluate, this is where they are, this is what they're doing. How do we come in as the stakeholders? How do we help these particular young people to move from this particular stage to a different stage that is self-reliant and not dependent on anyone? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Joyce. I will now turn to Ms. Ndiaye. UNICEF has always done and is still doing some very innovative things with young people to get their feedback, to get their input on major issues and challenges that they face. Could you explain to us why UNICEF decided to join this compact and what this partnerships means for your work on the ground? Thank you.
To have the opportunity to speak for UNICEF. I think I should start maybe by saying that we are interested in results at UNICEF, and it's all about the results that we can bring to adolescents in particular. As you know, we are concerned with the younger part of the young people who are the adolescents. And looking at results and looking at rights, I think it was one of the themes of the executive director recently, is that we cannot keep rights alive if you don't provide results to sustain the rights. So it's very important for us that as we work with adolescents, we work to produce results. And we are also very conscious that adolescents are there when conflict arises, we are there when bad things happen, and we are the first one actually to respond. We are the first responders. We're there to help themselves survive, our community survive, they endure with the rest of the community. And what has not happened is that we haven't taken them at the center of the problematic for adolescents and gotten from them all the resources, their creativity, their energy to find solutions. So as we embark into what we call at UNICEF our new strategic plan, we across everything that we do, be it in child survival, in education and health and everything, the problematic of adolescent is central. And the problematic of adolescent and humanitarian is central to what we are doing. And in that connection, and it hasn't started now, but it is something that we'll be focusing more and more. I just can pick up for the Jordan examples that Al-Handawi has mentioned, because I was also there in Jordan and I saw our Makani Center. In that Makani Center, which is an innovation in the way we deal with youth in the camp, and this is for young people who do not have or could not enroll in schools, but for which we have to provide a space, which is called a safe space, where they can learn some skills, increase their competencies, explore themselves, but first and foremost, they can relax, they can rest, they can consider options. And as they consider options and they rest from the hardship of, moving from Syria to Jordan, being in something which is totally foreign and difficult, they can also think about what's next. And I think this is really what we are looking with this compact. We are looking for something which is absolutely operational, something that speaks with and for adolescents from the beginning to the end, that supports the effort, and something that makes us also, each and every one of the organization, accountable for what we're doing. We have to be transparent in what we're doing. We have to be accountable for what we are doing. We have to leverage resources, including ours, fully for adolescents. And this is really what we are looking for going into the compact.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Ndiaye. Last but not least, I am pleased to give the floor to Marian Sedlak. Mr. Sedlak, as a youth activist and a first responder who's also worked in refugee camps, could you illustrate for us the added value that you've seen young people bring to humanitarian response, and tell us what all of us can do more and better to support young people's participation in transforming humanitarian action?
Yes, thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, at first I would like to put you into the situation. You are in your 20s, standing outside at 3 a.m. in the morning, -5 degrees of Celsius outside, and you witness a situation. You witness young, small boy, 5 years old, stepping out of the train. He's stepping into the fence, guarded by soldiers with black masks on their faces, with guns, and you see that boy holding a teddy bear, and the boy is crying. You are standing there, you are feeling completely powerless, useless, and you think like there must be a way how to end this madness. You are standing there, but despite your skills, knowledge, you can't do anything. My name is Marian Sedlak. I'm the liaison officer for human rights and peace issues in the International Federation of Medical Student Associations, and this is my real story from my experience as working as healthcare professional in the refugee camp in Slovenia. I was working there during this year in February, and in that time I had already had a lot of experience working with human rights and peace issues, but still this was really horrible experience for me. And I would like to share with you a little bit, like small point of view, from the point of view of international organization, and how do we work, and how can we actually effectively implement the compact in order to help young people to meet their needs and to satisfy needs of all young people all around the world. So in IFMSA, we are the international organization, we are the federation, so we represent together more than 1.3 million of medical students all around the world. Our portfolio of actions is really diverse. We work from public health issues through sexual and reproductive health, medical education, professional exchanges, and last but not least, human rights and peace issues. It's really difficult to put it in one sentence what we do, but I would say we are creating the future healthcare leaders, one medical student after another. And we are equipping them with tools and skills and abilities to become the champions for global health, to come to their communities, improve them, make them resilient in the present, but also in the future. We have been actively engaged in WHS process from the beginning, but thanks to United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth, thanks to their passion and dedication for these issues. So we have been present in Doha, as was mentioned. We had global youth consultation for WHS process in Doha, and we were actively pushing for a healthcare agenda. We were also following the pathway to Istanbul. And IFMSA was one of the first organizations who committed to the compact, who signed the compact, and we are trying to be also active in the follow-up process. But I think, as you have presented the compact 5 core areas, I think it's really important to realize that we are still missing something. And I think this is the communication between the partners, between the youth organizations. It's really important to think about how youth organization works, how partners work, how governments work, and try to link it together. For example, our federation works in many certain levels, from the international level, through regional levels, through national level, and local levels. For example, there are many successful activities we have. I would like to share only one with you, because like 5 minutes is not enough. A few years ago, there have been terrible floods in the Republic of Serbia. Medical students in their national organization were able to, in hours after those floods, were able to contact the responsible officials, were able to gather together, to be deployed into those areas which were hit by the floods the most. They were actually working in the triage, and they were saving people's lives. And we have many successful projects like this, and also other students' organizations all around the world. Thousands of organizations have same successes and same skills and same experience. But I think we need to really divide that all youth organizations have different priorities. As you have said, some of us needs funds, some of us needs resources in the terms of not financial resources, but material resources. As you said also, some of us need mentorship, support, or just a creative space, how to show our creativity and innovation. And I think usually people, in the end of their speeches, they make recommendations and fancy words. I think they have been said a lot of times during this United Nations General Assembly, during the WHS. We are still stating the same recommendations. I would like to use this situation to just tell one. Please use this United Nations General Assembly, use even this event to talk, to communicate with young people, because this is the only way how can we move forward. We need to be invited to the dialogue, to concrete dialogues about concrete steps, how to proceed. So please, approach us. We are young, we are innovative and willing to work, and this also goes same for young organizations. Please don't be afraid to approach partners, don't be afraid to approach members of the compact, and I think we are here for the same goal. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Marianne. I think you and your fellow panelists have given us plenty of food for thought and discussion. So I'm now going to open the floor for questions, comments, practical suggestions on how we can build on this compact to ensure that the humanitarian sector makes youth participation a reality on the ground. For those of you in the room, I'd like you to raise your hand and keep raising your hand if you haven't gotten the mic in time. But please state your name and affiliation before making your comment or asking your question. For those of you online, you're welcome to email your questions to media@ipinst.org or tweet in your questions using the ipinst hashtag, and we'll try to take them into consideration too. I see a number of hands up already. So since this is a youth event, I'm going to try to guess who's the youngest of you all, and I'm thinking that is the lady in the back. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm 29.
There might be some
I'm not sure
competition,
you're
but
right. My name is Hillary. I'm with the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. Thank you very much to the panel. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how, in realizing the compact, we can address the particular barriers that women and girls face to their fullest participation.
thank you very much, Hillary, for that. I'm going to take 2 or 3 questions, and then I'll go back to the panel for seeing who wants to address them. So I'm still trying to do this. It's very delicate, right, to see the age of people on their face, but I'll go there and then come to you, and then Joe.
Hello, my name is Andrei, Ukraine World Organization of Scout Movement. My question is quite straight. Today it was that representation during the Social Good Summit, and I would like to know what is your vision, how the youth organization could communicate with different SDGs, and some kind of plan of technical communications between the stakeholders and that kind of representatives. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And then this lady, and then I'll take a second round after that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Amna Noor Galas. I'm a physician with humanitarian work. I'm here working with another organization for human rights, but I'm talking now from my background as a medical doctor in humanitarian field. Kudos to you. Thank you so much. I'm very, very proud of the work that you're doing. I have just one point, or the suggestion or food for thought. You talked very much about how the young healthcare providers are going there in the field and providing work, and I'm very proud of that. But also, I'm also suggesting to support the young healthcare providers in the field who are in those areas of conflict. The last study by Physicians for Human Rights, they said that the young physicians in Syria are being killed. So when you're using the younger generation, as Mr. Al-Hindawi has mentioned, we're not just losing the younger generation. We're also using the young people who are going to provide healthcare for the future. So it's a double blow. So probably a way to think in the future how to support those people and who are in the field and in those areas of conflict. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll maybe go around the panel to see if you want to respond to the 3 questions or make comments. And I'll maybe start with Marian.
Thank you very much for the question. So I'll try to say some short opinion about all 3 from my point of view. So to the question of Hillary about women and girls, I think the first action point of the compact clearly states that all the actions and policies and our programs should be gender inclusive and age inclusive. And so I think it again depends on the concrete talks and concrete suggestions between us, like young people, and our partners. And it should be in our best intention to include girls and women, to try to empower them. And personally, I'm not seeing this as like really big problem, because like we know that women and girls should be naturally empowered and naturally should be engaged to the fullest potential. So I think again this is just the matter of concrete talks and to include it everywhere and every time. So this is my opinion about the first question. Then the question of Andrei about the participation of young people in decision-making process. Like, to be honest, I'm not so knowledgeable about this thing, but I would like to support, for example, the idea of youth delegates. I know many countries have youth delegates in their official delegations to the United Nations processes. For example, my country, they don't have. And I would like to, again, like support and empower each country to start to talk with their national youth councils, for example, to empower representatives, to get representatives to the processes. And again, like, sometimes I don't understand, because this is again in the best intentions of the country and of everyone to include young people. And to Dr. Galas, thank you very much for the question. And we know this is healthcare in danger, and the safety of medical professionals in the field is maybe our core let's say focus of our external advocacies. We know about many people who have lost their lives, also medical students, also young professionals in Syria, in Yemen, in Afghanistan. We had also joint campaigns with Doctors Without Borders, with Red Cross and other organizations. So we are really aware of the issue, and we are trying to advocate for it. When it comes to concrete steps since we can't work much in the field, so we can't take field action, but still we can do really great actions in the policy and this kind of stuff. So we are trying to do our best, and we will continue till the end. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, Fonny?
When it comes to women and girls, I believe that this compact, it has that aspect of they want to develop an inclusive kind of program that includes women and girls. But how do we make them participate? Because if we come up with a program and we just have like a few ladies signing up and later on a few of them dropping out, it becomes a problem. Because where I come from, there are many girls, but in the refugee community, and they lack mentorship. They lack someone to look up to. They lack people they can turn to, people who can talk to them. And it's very, for them, like when I interact with them, they say that it's easy to talk to someone who has been in your situation than to talk to someone who has not been in your situation, because they don't understand what you're telling them. If you tell them do this, they'll be like, why are you telling me this? And you're not in this particular situation. So we also need to look for young mentors within the refugee communities, young mentors within the migrant communities who have been in that particular situation and they've gone through that problem, so that it becomes easier for them to be included in the program, to participate fully without dropping out of a particular program that might be set up. Thank you.
Just one sentence.
Yes, sure.
One last sentence. For example, speaking about mentors and young people leading the communities, I think the program of youth leaders, which Mr. Al-Hendawi said, is an amazing idea, a great campaign, because young people will be able to see some role models and youth leaders, and they can like follow those inspirational people. So I think, for example, this is also one of the great ways how to start and how to empower people.
Well, the question, there's no easy answer. There's no shortcut, really. I mean, there's no one exclusive way that ticks the box of youth participation. Youth participation has to be brought in many different ways. One of them is the serious participation, where as youth delegates, part of the actual delegations, you have also to add other initiatives where you open up and you engage with youth-led organizations. And the reason why I tried to, in a visual way, to explain the 4 pillars of the UN and how we have been working hard in the past 3-4 years and plugging in youth issues systematically in each one of these pillars, because I know that's the only guarantee that we will keep having more waves of youth coming and participating. I always hesitate when somebody would tell me I represent young people. I tell them I don't really understand it as representation for 1.8 billion, because that's a lot of work, to be honest. But I understand it more as opening up and allowing more venues for youth to come forward and participate themselves and defending their rights and processes where they are not present. I am privileged to be present there. So that's my logic and understanding how we could enhance youth participation at the UN, including all these processes. And just seeing the momentum, really. I mean, there's an amazing momentum coming at all these fronts, the human rights, peace and security, development, on youth issues, that unprecedented. Do you know how many youth-led events or youth side events during this General Assembly? Over 50 events. This never happened before. But my concern is not the 50 events, because we'll be discussing youth. Last year, one of the statistics shows, basically, I don't know who conducted that, but it was in the Secretariat. There was 1,500 bilateral meetings during the week of the UN General Assembly. 1,500. So our job is not by convening these events, by coming together and talking about these issues, is to make sure that we influence the actual discussions that will be happening during the different bilateral meetings. And in this compact in particular, I think is something for all of us to be proud of. All the UN agencies who are really in the lead and the forefront of delivering the humanitarian responses, is to make sure that we include young people as part of the solution. And along the way, there's a lot of literacy work has to be done. Where I'm lucky in this room and looking to some of the faces here, for example, knows like they have been really leading the way in opening up for more venues for youth participation. But sometimes we take things for granted. I just will share with you one story that I cannot tell, but I have to share. It happened yesterday. I mean, one of the countries where they have so many young people, I'm not going to mention the name of the country, so many young people in that country. A minister came yesterday telling us about a brilliant youth policy they just adopted. The policy, ladies and gentlemen, was adopted 2009, expired 2013. So the minister came of one of the line ministries talking about a youth policy that was expired. And I'm not here to name and shame. I'm just talking about the fact you should never take things for granted. I mean, people tell me like youth issues are a problem. Don't take anything for granted. A very important ministry in a very important country. The minister doesn't know that they don't have a youth policy or the youth policy expired 2013. And still, there's a lot of work to be done. And that's why it reminds me why bringing these youth events and having the youth themselves coming is extremely important. And that's why I'm very, very proud that we managed to put the 17 young leaders out of 18,000. You know, the 18,000 applications, reviewing them was like taking a tour of what works in the world. When you read 18,000 applications for young people, what they are doing in their communities, sometimes you even regret that you have to choose only 17, but it's better than nothing. And I just wish that this mushroom and more initiatives at the national level, because young people are so thirsty to be acknowledged, to participate. And some people out there, like some entities and agencies, have to pick it up. And I'm very proud that the United Nations is doing a fair share and setting the norm for how to work with young people.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cornel, do you want to add something?
Maybe briefly, I'm listening to your input with a great level of attention. You know, when you've been doing this for a while, I guess there are a few things you learn very quickly. First, that the moment is creating incredible opportunities for young people. The World Humanitarian Summit, for example, and its focus on localized response is forcing all the different stakeholders to take a look at events before, during, and after shock, and to make sure that even the poorest communities put in place systems to be able to respond to these shocks. This will create enormous opportunities for young people to get involved. Technology is just creating a whole new conversation that's really favoring exchanges. So there are a lot of positives that are happening. But at the end of the day, it's going to be very important for first the members of the partnership, but also other organizations to implement real-time processes and systems. The bottom line is we have to ask ourselves next year, how has our commitment to these 4 actions influenced the way we behave? And that will be a first measure of our success. We have to commit to reconvening within the next few months, and we need to ask each and every one of our organizations, what did you do differently since you signed up to this partnership? And show us exactly what amount of results and effect it has been. So I think, when we think about things like barriers to gender and otherwise, we have a wealth of experience and lessons learned. We have years of knowledge as to what works and what doesn't work. We know the importance of the right policies. We know the importance of the right advocacy tools. We know the importance of the right programs, et cetera, et cetera. But to translate all of this into actual action requires the comprehensive commitment of all the stakeholders, and that's not easy to get. So, let me stop here. But I think interesting times, very, very, I think, exciting moment for this to actually be happening, as a moment when I think we're transitioning in so many ways, but also immense challenges that will require us to continue to stay engaged.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ndiaye?
On women and girls, and especially adolescent girls, which at UNICEF we know that they are part of the most disadvantaged and marginalized groups. And I think if we really want to achieve results for that area, we need to know which kind of results we want to achieve. So what works that we are focusing on is the data. So disaggregated data will help understand that population of young people and their needs, and to identify priorities for them. So very important to have the right basis to define the program and the results for girls and young women. In connection with that, I think it will be very important also to do a real-time monitoring, something which is much closer, who gives quick, good information on what is the situation of women and girls. And there, I think the innovations will help us a lot. For example, what we do at UNICEF, we have a U-report, which is used by young people themselves to collect information on themselves, on the community, and to help shape action within the community, engage with other people. So I think we need very practical things. We should not say it's an issue, but it's being addressed. It is an issue, Young women, girls are part of the most disadvantaged. We have to recognize that. We have to have data that give us enough information on their situation in humanitarian context, in all contexts. And we have to innovate on ways to get that information about what works with them, what doesn't work with them, and to redirect the action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for 2 or 3 more questions. So, okay. Let us start with the gentleman here in the front row. Yes.
Thank you.
If you can try to be as brief as possible, then we might be able to get all 4 questions in.
All right, my name is Marwan Bishtawi. I'm from an organization called IMCS Pax Romana. I'm glad to say that we're one of the organizations on the back of this compact. And I've been hearing a lot about what we've done and how to start conversations. I'm also happy to say that my organization is part of continuing this conversation. We're holding workshops in Paris, etc. I think the question that I'd like to ask is on that vein. How do we move forward in this conversation vis-a-vis aggregating, reporting on the progress that the members of this compact have been doing? How do we take our wonderful words right now and measure the progress that's been made in terms of action?
Thank you very much. That's a very specific question. We'll just move row by row because I can't see your faces, so I can't guess your age.
All right. Hi, my name is Julius Kramer. I'm with the World Organization of the Scout Movement as well. I have a question and just a few reflections on what's been said by Mr. Al-Andawi and also Madame Ndaya about education and the importance of safe spaces. I have friends working with Burundian refugees in Rwanda and Mahama refugee camp. And just a very short story is that every evening, 100 young people, more than 100 young people, gather spontaneously. These are young people that are scouts with a background in Burundi, and they gather and they communicate through whistling. So when they start whistling, they know that in this sub-community of the refugee camp, this is when it's time to gather and play and have fun and do scouting. And this is done on the initiative of the young people. They have no formal leaders in the community. It's built on local role models and purely their own initiative. So I guess my question is, how can we work towards recognizing, supporting, empowering these types of initiatives, and also recognizing the role of non-formal education as not only a complement to formal education, but as an crucial aspect in creating these safe spaces and ensuring the development of young people to express their curiosity, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much for that. We'll take 2 more there, and then I'll go back to the panel.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Erica from the UNFPA Young Innovators Fellow. I would like to ask, how would you support in your organization in reaching young people to be part of the decision-making process, especially those in the marginalized and most vulnerable sectors? Because we have always been hearing about youth participation, but sometimes we lack the effort to really reach out to those who are really in need. So that's.
Thank you very much. And then
thank you very much.
last question.
The last question. Thank you for the honor. My name is Hajrin Fritz. I'm working with the United Nations Volunteers Program, and we are very happy to announce that we will be part of the compact. Our organization is devoted, and we have a strong mandate to youth and working with local community on the ground. And I thank all the partners here for convening this event, and UNV is on board.
Excellent. Okay. If there is one last question, we can take it, because that was
then I have to
an
take this
announcement.
chance now.
All right.
I'm Richard from SOS Children's Villages, working with kids in 130 countries. Now, question to the 2 of you. Both of you have shared personal stories when you, Joyce, came into Kenya, and Marianne, this 5-year-old boy with the teddy bear. Now, if you imagine you would be a child, 12 years or 15 years old, and you are in a migration situation, refugee or migration, and you are detained for indefinite times until your asylum status is cleared. What do you feel? And question, how can the young generation work with organizations like us in order to end this practice? Because you cannot cut the Convention of the Rights of the Children into half and say, because children are children of asylum seekers, you simply grant them only 50% of the children's rights. It's impossible. And we are calling for much more courage of the member states. Without this courage, they are destroying a generation of youth. What do we do together?
Thank you very much. To be fair, I'll start the other way around this time, and then we'll close with you. So, Ms. Ndiaye, do you want to go first?
Thank you. I think there is one is not a question about the youth whistling in the camp and gathering. I think it just illustrates again how resilience is built in young people, and how much we can make out of that resilience and out of innovation, and not only technological innovation, but even innovation in the ways that people continue to live and to thrive even in the hardest situations. And I think when we work with adolescents, and I have seen that because I visited Jordan and I met a number of them, this is what really comes out, is that they are constantly looking at solutions for themselves. And this is why it is so important to bring them back. And this is what we have not done enough in the past, is to bring them and together to find the solutions. And this brings me to the decision-making question for adolescents. When we make decisions for the better of humanity, where are they? And I think when our U report, for example, it's for us a platform that will do exactly that does exactly that. One instance, we used a U reform, and I think it was in Uganda. We had a problem in the community with the crops. So the leaves, the banana leaves, had something that wasn't working, that was symptomatic of a huge problem economically also for the community. So we had adolescents in the community looking everywhere with a SMS, and it was just one message. And very quickly, we had a survey of where is the problem, how would the community and the government direct resources to those communities to solve that problem? So this is where in the decision making, in real-time information, in asking the right question and involving also the youth in those very short, quick surveys, because we're not out of how the surveys are being designed, we are at the center of it. I think this is what brings in the decision making, this is what brings us maybe a better sense of what the results should be and how to get it efficiently. So, and again, coming back to what I had said in the introduction, the Convention on the Rights of Children and the results for children are not separable. They are together. It's because we achieve results that we sustain, we feed on the Convention on Children. Without practical results, without working and showing that we are able to achieve results, we cannot just continue to talk about the rights of children. We need to achieve those results one by one, step by step, continuously.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cornel?
A lot of very interesting points were raised. Thank you. The issue of accountability is critical. We need to hold ourselves and our partners to account, and the best way to do that is for us to come back and ask ourselves how we've actually changed our behavior based on this commitment. At the IFRC, we have a youth commission, and the youth are very much active in influencing our policies, in looking at our operation, in advising to make sure that we're very much including youth in our thinking process. And again, for good purpose, because as you rightly pointed out, half our volunteers belong to that specific category. I think you spoke about the issue of protection. We need to continue to advocate. We need to continue to denounce. We need to pull our efforts together. We need to continue to make the argument, and we need to continue to push until we see improvements in the way migrants and refugees are handled. And there's no ifs, buts, or maybes around this point. I've been now around the world and I've seen the immense level of suffering and the injustice that you have whole generations right now that will have known nothing but conflict all their lives. And then these young people will be expected to integrate communities as if they grew up in the same neighborhood as my children did. That expectation is just unrealistic. So the need for us to be very sensitive to these circumstances and to be very aggressive in implementing programs to be able to work through these issues, I think, is essential and is very, very important. And the last point, because we've heard a lot of, I think, incredible ideas, but there are what, 1.5 million people, right? 1.5 billion people now on Facebook. A lot of these have nothing to do with my age. So there's incredible amount of space also, and for young people to begin and continue discussion around these issues. No other time in human history have young people been so interconnected, has had so much access for real serious and substantial discussions. So we also need your help in making sure that we're getting the message out there, that we're using this opportunity for good, that we're actually tabling the very serious issues, because that's the way I guess we fix it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ahmed.
Yeah, I think my last message is something also, one of my main takeaways from the World Humanitarian Summit in Istanbul. One of the best indicators to judge the success of a humanitarian work by not having this much humanitarian work in the first place, and by making sure that we find an end to some of the conflicts that are exacerbating the humanitarian situation in many parts of the world. In other words, the message that came from Doha consultation with the young people in the major group and went to Istanbul, it was talking about, in the first place, we should not treat man-made conflict as if they were a natural disaster. I have been saying this repeatedly, and I think there's a message here we need to hear when we convene this summit and the migrants and refugees. We have to remember that human suffering is not the only treat for it as a humanitarian response. I think that was the spirit of the compact itself, to identify lots of gaps that needs to be addressed, and together we will be addressing them. At the same time, the message of young people, when it comes particularly to the element related to participation, the question is not only how to roll your sleeves and go to the field and help, which is very much needed, but also we need a global voice from young people to remind political leaders that they should not basically leave humanitarian suffering exacerbates over a number of years, and Syria is just an example. And some of you heard me using this example a lot. I always put this analogy: if you have a leak in the roof, you don't only clean the floor, you also stop the leak. And I think what we are seeing today, there's an attempt for many to treat man-made conflicts as there's nothing we can do about it. The only thing we can do is to help and respond to the humanitarian suffering, which we do need to do that, but at the same time, I think leaders have to live up to their responsibilities in finding solutions, particularly for conflicts where solution is possible, should have been the case long time ago, and I think that's the best outcome we could expect today, and the best reassurance is the outcome was already adopted. So that's the key message there, and I really call for an expanded understanding for the contribution of young people in humanitarian response, not only at the actual response, but also in not getting there in the first place. And I think that's the best thing we could help ICRC and the UNICEF and UNFPA and many others. I think that's where the symbolic fact that we are convening this event at IPI. I would like to thank you very much, Doctor, for being a very strong supporter to the youth movement, and you have been really embracing the youth movement at all these fronts, and very grateful to IPI for bringing us together today. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's an honor for us too. And I'll now give the floor maybe to Foni.
How do we work as young people to ensure that the children in detention are also considered? Yeah. For me personally, I think the first stage would be, as young people, we need to have the information. Yeah. We need to understand what does it mean for a child to be in detention, because some other young people don't understand what that means. They wouldn't know what detention means or all that. So there's need for communication for us to understand what it means for a child to be in detention. Secondly, we need to also look at how can we make sure that it's a global kind of thing. Like every young person in the different regions are able to voice out their concerns. We need to have mobile kind of information that the children who don't have access to this information get this information, because they also need to understand as young that a fellow young person or a child is in detention. So we need to make them information mobile. They get the understanding. Thirdly, we also need to, if as a young person I need to speak up against such a thing, I need to understand what advocacy means, because it's only a handful of people who understand what advocacy means. So if you have many young people understanding what advocacy means, and they understand what child detention means, then it becomes easier for them to speak up. It becomes easier for them to think about different solutions, because if you don't understand what you want to advocate for, then you won't have many perspectives. You won't have different solutions to that particular information. And lastly, social media is a very cool thing with us young people. We use social media a lot. So if we understand what it means to be what's the name of that thing? If you understand what it means to be that child. Yes. Yeah. If we understand what it means to have a child in detention, and we understand what it means to advocate, and a child and a young person in regions that don't have access to this information have access to information, then we create a global kind of village of information for us young people. We'll make things trend, yeah? Our voices will be heard, and once our voice is heard, then it becomes easier for people to look into it much more with much more concern and say, young people don't want this. It's not something that they want happening to other young people. That's the best we can do to support other young people, because we won't change any policies at the level we are, but we can advocate for a change of policy and influence the policy makers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Foni. And Marian?
Yeah, at first, thank you very much for amazing questions and amazing answers. Like, they have been inspiration to me. As I have started my talks with a personal story, I would also end my talks with a personal story, and I would like to address the issue of children and detention. Like, personally, like, I'm studying medicine. I would like to be a future doctor, and I'm working as something like a nurse in the traumatology and emergency. So I have seen some bad things during my 4 years there, but I have to admit that I have never seen things which I witnessed in the refugee camp, when we had young people coming to our refugee tent and they were trying to commit suicide in front of our eyes. They were actually trying to hang themselves because they were rejected when they were claiming asylum, and they were just turned around away. I think, like, keeping children in detention is the direct violation of the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Like, this is a direct violation, and not only this convention, but also other international documents which sets the standards of claiming asylum. So, as you said, like, we need to strengthen our advocacy efforts towards the countries, because, like, at least I think in the end they are responsible for the conditions they have in their detention centers. And I know many organizations, NGOs, and also youth organizations are working on this. And I think we should strengthen those efforts, because in some countries conditions get better a little bit, but still it's like a prison, and children should never be treated like a prisoners, especially when they are seeking for the protection, which is their basic human right. So just to tell what we can do, for example, I have seen, not just in this refugee camp, also in other settings, young people, volunteers who have been volunteering like psychological first aid for children. I know it's quite difficult to work with children, but with the proper training and knowledge, we are able to do that. I have seen young people working as volunteers in family reunification projects. I have seen some young people working as the volunteers for UNHCR and UNICEF. They were working in camps, providing playgrounds. They were playing with children and trying at least somehow improve their mood while they are in the detention. As you said, like, without setting the time for the detention children, like, this is not working. This is total madness. So I think that would be my question, and we can for sure do something.
Thank you very much. I think for all of us, when we see children suffering, it goes straight to the heart. It's where it hurts most, but it's also very, very inspiring to see how young people, children, adolescents, young people, they overcome the hurt and they stay active and they participate and they are the hope and they bring the hope to all of us. So I want to thank everyone here for contributing to this panel, but more importantly to contributing to transform humanitarian action, not only for young people, but also with young people. So I know this is a very busy week in New York, so I'm going to let you go, but please before doing that, join me in thanking our co-sponsors and our panel.